All right, so we are talking about the theater of the absurd, and we are looking especially at Martin ESSLIN's PDF, where we're just looking at the introduction for now. We will continue on with it. We'll probably read most of it, or at least a good portion of it, by the time we are done with the semester. And it is a book that, if you can get it, I certainly recommend it. It's a very helpful guide as far as looking through the theater of the absurd goes. So, something important to consider is that ESSLIN is, as a theater critic, as a writer, understands that all of the writers that he is talking about, all of the dramatists that he's talking about here, Beckett, Ionesco, Genet, and others, right, that certainly are included, do not consider themselves to be part of any sort of theater group, right? This is not a movement per se at the time that these plays are being written, and many of the authors would sort of criticize or reject this label. ESSLIN works very carefully with this, right? It's important to sort of work with the people that you're criticizing, right, that you are evaluating, and to simply point out that there are similarities, right, undisputable similarities between the works that we are about to read. And the other thing that ESSLIN does very well is describing exactly what it is that the theater of the absurd does. I think that the initial illustration that he gives at the beginning of the introduction, the San Quentin prison group, where prisoners are exposed to the theater of the absurd and understand what's going on, is an excellent example of exactly what we're trying to do. If it's presented in a way that may be a little bit pretentious, I get it, right? ESSLIN sort of is out there, presenting this as if, all these smart people didn't get it, but it took the people who were in the situation to understand what, all these people with intellectual prowess did not. Sure, in a way, that's really exactly what the theater of the absurd is meant to do. We have this preconceived notion, I think, in many cases. When we talk about people like Beckett, Genet, Ionesco, when we talk about people like, all the major writers, there is an intellectual group of people who are going to come around and sort of grab onto them and say, these are ours, right? And you can't have them, or you'll never understand them as well as we do. And I think that that's patently false. It is very important to understand that the theater of the absurd is meant to do exactly what it did for the prisoners in San Quentin. It is telling, right, that the prisoners themselves did understand it, where, yes, the intellectuals certainly had some difficulty with it. The prisoners were not trying to understand anything. They were simply being exposed to something that they felt very deeply, that they understood as it came off the stage and spoke to them in a very personal way. I hope that we have this same experience in this class. However, it's going to take a couple of very important steps on your part, and certainly on mine, right, presenting this the way that I'm trying to present it, especially in an asynchronous class. It can be a very difficult thing to do. So I am going to ask you to take a little bit of extra effort this week, and perhaps consider as well looking at a little bit of Waiting for Godot, the play that is mentioned in ESSLIN. To finish up with this brief video before we dive into exactly what we're going to be trying to do with the Theater of the Absurd, I will give you a few very, I think, important tips as far as engaging with this material. Number one, this is not material that we necessarily need to, on the very first trip through the material, seek to understand intellectually, right? There is something very basic about these plays that ESSLIN describes as, you sit and you feel, and you are exposed to it, and you react to it the way that you're going to react to it, because that is what the play says to you. These plays are not meant to be this massive, intellectual effort necessarily. We are going to certainly be applying what we know about existentialism and absurdism to the plays as we evaluate them, sure. But the initial exposure to them needs to be very honest and very basic, right? Watch and see how you feel. And one thing that I will 100% admit to everybody in this class is that the very first time I was exposed to the theater of the absurd was the play that we're going to come up to soon, called The Bald Soprano. I could not stand it. I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. And I couldn't understand what was going on. What changed is I went to France, right, and our exchange group went to see this play. And I was not looking forward to it because I thought to myself, this is a play I've already read. I've already been exposed to this in literature. I don't know why I would care. When I actually saw it in person, very, very different. Very different reaction to it, because at that point in time, I actually had kind of given up on it and said, fine, we're going to go see this thing. I guess we'll go and see it. And when I actually approached it in that way, saying I have no expectations, I'm already kind of disappointed with what I've read, and just let it happen on stage, that's where I was sort of drawn into it, where I saw that some of these things sort of mirrored where I was feeling about communication, feeling about, right? When you're learning a language is an absurd thing to do, right? It feels weird because you're being exposed to all this language. You're getting some of it, you're not getting some of it. Sometimes you hear things and you think, I don't know if that's correct or not. Words are flying everywhere. The Bald Soprano does a great job of sort of talking about language, right? Waiting for Godot and Endgame, I believe, do a great job talking to people in your situation as students, right? You are sort of in the middle of a transition period in your lives. You may be feeling a little bit directionless. You may be feeling like you're looking for some things. You may be feeling like perhaps, right, that you're kind of in a little bit of prison academically, or in life in general. This is perhaps something that you enjoy doing, right, going to school, but there's also some constraints and some feelings like, oh boy, I'm kind of locked into this thing and I can't really do anything but this, right? I think that we're in a good place, right, as students, to be exposed to the theater of the absurd and to have a chance of just sitting back and letting it happen, feeling how we feel. Give it a chance, right? I think that's going to be very important. If there's anything that you get out of this introductory video here, please give this a chance. Allow it to wash over you. Allow yourself to be open to the idea of watching this kind of theater, and be okay as well with saying, this is not my favorite thing, I don't love it, but make sure that you're at least giving it enough of a chance that when we do, right, get around to looking at it as an academic exercise, that we can talk about how the absurd turns up, right, in all of these plays. So, in the next video, we're going to talk about Martin ESSLIN and about the PDF, about the introduction, and about what ESSLIN has to say about the theater of the absurd. So, see you in just a second.